The death toll in Erie County, New York, climbing again. 34 people now dead as a result of this devastating winter storm. Rescue crews are still searching for people stranded during the blizzard. CNN's Athena Jones is live in Buffalo. Hi there, Athena. How are things there today?
Hi, Amber. Well, the digging out from this storm continues. I want to show you the result of some of that digging out. Look at this huge pile of snow. You could very call it's a mountain of snow. It is dwarfing some of these two-story houses on a street nearby. So it's clearly several feet high. In fact, they are no longer dumping snow there because they're concerned that it's getting too high. They've moved it to another pile on the other side of those trees. But we're talking about more than 4 feet of snow that fell over the course of several days. And now that snow is ended and the cleanup continues. The driving ban remains in effect because authorities want, their goal is to clear at least one lane in every street in Buffalo by tomorrow morning. And so they'll reevaluate that driving ban overnight or in the early hours, depending on the progress of snow removal. But one reason this is so important is the number of people who that emergency services could not reach during the height of the storm. We know more than 400 calls to EMS went unanswered, and so that is the main reason for making sure there is at least one lane open in every street so that the city's emergency operations can function properly. As you mentioned, 34 fatalities now. That's 3 more than we knew of last night. And at least 3 of those, 2 men and 1 woman, are 2 John Does and 1 Jane Doe. So unidentified people. Authorities say that families who are missing a loved one should call the police. And we know that the National Guard began at 9:30 this morning going door to door doing wellness checks in neighborhoods that lost power. Much of the power has been restored, but neighborhoods that lost power, they're going to check on them to make sure that no one's in trouble inside. And authorities are also going door to door, checking on the people who called emergency services and were not able to be reached. So the goal here, clear this snow and clear as much as possible before the temperatures warm up to the 50s to try to avoid a flood threat. Amara?
And Athena, you mentioned the number of people who called emergency services and were not able to get help. That includes apparently 22-year-old Endell Taylor, who was found dead in her car. She sent her sisters this video as she was stuck in snow trying to get home from work. Watch.
No, cause it's from the blizzard.
It's heartbreaking. She never made it home. What more do we know about what happened to Endell Taylor?
It's just terrible. The details are a little bit spotty here. We know that she was driving home from her job at a senior citizen center and that she was apparently only about 6 more minutes away from her house by car, and that's when she got stranded. She had just moved up to Buffalo, or she had moved up to Buffalo at some point recently from North Carolina, and she was communicating with some of her family down in North Carolina. There's a group chat with the sisters. That's what she was sending the videos to, and she just wasn't able to be reached. She had called 911, but they couldn't get to her, and so later on she was found dead. It really is just heartbreaking.
Oh,
Emma?
Athena Jones, thank you. Well, as Buffalo...
He appeared on Fox News last night. Listen to this exchange.
Do you have no shame? Do you have no shame in the people who are now you're asking to trust you to go and be their voice for them, their families, and their kids in Washington?
Tulsi, I can say the same thing about the Democrats and the party. Look at Joe Biden. Joe Biden's been lying to the American people for 40 years. He's the president of the United States. Democrats resoundingly support him. Do they have no shame?
For more, let's bring in NBC's Ryan Nobles on Capitol Hill. Ryan, welcome. So how long can Republican leadership remain silent about this new GOP congressman-elect, and do you think we can expect to see ethics investigations?
Well, to answer your first question, Alex, it's likely they will remain quiet right up until they come back and start the next Congress on January 3rd. That's when they'll be in a position where they're forced to answer questions from people like me in the halls of Congress. We're going to press them about what they plan to do about GeorgeSantos. And it also coincides with Kevin McCarthy's bid to become the next speaker. That vote taking place on January 3rd He already knows that he has George Santos's vote. The margins are very tight in that regard. They're tight not just only between Republicans and Democrats, but there's also a faction of Republicans who have vowed not to vote for Kevin McCarthy as Speaker. So he needs every vote he can possibly get. Now, in terms of an ethics investigation, that's also pretty likely at this point. It doesn't take much to ask the Ethics Committee to begin a probe into a sitting member of Congress. And the Ethics Committee, of course, is completely bipartisan. An equal number of Republicans and Democrats serve on that panel. So it is likely that someone will ask the Ethics Committee to look into this, and they will begin an investigation. But once that happens, Alex, it almost becomes a black hole. The Ethics Committee does not publicly talk about their investigations until they are concluded. And oftentimes these ethics investigations amount to a slap on the wrist, a censure, or even something less than that. So it is very likely that George Santos will be a sitting member of Congress. And unless there is some sort of prosecutorial investigation into particularly his finances by either the New York Attorney General's office or the U.S. attorney in that part of New York, it's unlikely that he's going to see any real repercussions for basically lying about just about every aspect of his biography.
The United States and the Philippines have said they're considering new coronavirus restrictions on travellers from China after Beijing announced it would reopen its borders next month. Japan, India and Malaysia have already said they'll tighten restrictions on arrivals from China amid concerns about a surge in cases and a lack of transparency from the Chinese government. Our diplomatic correspondent Paul Adams reports.
From the world's most populous nation, alarming scenes. China's hospitals are overwhelmed. COVID infections soaring. The country's abrupt decision to dismantle much of its strict COVID regime apparently yielding terrifying results. Wards full of desperately ill people. Outside this hospital in Chengdu, a queue for emergency services. Government officials say the situation is under control. That's not what these pictures suggest. At the Dongjiao Funeral Home, one of the city's biggest, more evidence of the scale of the crisis. One funeral procession after another. Workers here say they're so busy they have no time to eat. From 30 to 50 services a day, up to around 200. COVID mostly to blame. And yet China is opening up, relaxing rules for inbound travellers and raising the prospect of its own citizens, once again, being able to go abroad. Welcome news for travel companies after 3 bleak years.
Since this morning, we've had lots of inquiries from our customers. They're asking whether they can travel abroad normally again, whether they'll need to quarantine on their return, and when international tourism will return.
But with some countries already adopting extra travel requirements for Chinese visitors, and the United States citing a lack of transparent data, officials in Beijing reject any suggestion that China has lost control.
The argument you mentioned is a bias smear campaign and political manipulation with a hidden agenda, which does not stand up to scrutiny of facts and runs counter to the truth.
After last month's nationwide protests, this is the image China wants to project of a country finally turning its back on the virus and on its own draconian response. But China's long, hard battle with COVID is far from over. Paul Adams, BBC News.
Shattered glass, a screen window removed, a storage room door left ajar. This is what's left of this first-floor balcony where maintenance worker Cesar Montelongo was fatally wounded not long after running into resident and friend of nearly 30 years, Jose Dominguez.
I was surprised because he was here at work, and I asked him, what are you doing here? This is Christmas Day. And then he told me, well, we got some problems, some issues that we have to solve and fix. That's why I'm here. And I told myself, well, that's bad luck.
Never could he imagine what would happen next. Grand Prairie police say at around 6 p.m. Christmas Eve, several water lines burst in the frigid weather. The longtime apartment maintenance worker had been called in to check several balconies for more ruptures. A resident who believed his apartment was being burglarized armed himself with a firearm and shot the victim through a window from the inside. Montelongo leaves behind a wife and 5 sons.
My dad wasn't trying to break in. He was just looking for leaking pipes. when he was shot, and it said that it wasn't just one bullet, but multiple shots that were fired.
The resident has not been arrested or identified and is cooperating with police.
It's not justified at all, for any reasons.
We asked defense attorney and former prosecutor Russell Wilson, who's not involved in this case, to give insight on possible legal questions ahead.
One is, did the apartments notify the apartment owners that they were going to be having individuals on their balconies? And then two, what's the location of the pipes? Has this type of incident, the repair of the pipes occurred before, and has it been always done in that way?
The castle doctrine, Wilson says, could be applied. It allows homeowners to defend their property, including balconies, against an anticipated burglary.
Now, that doesn't, mean at all costs, but it's a pretty strong presumption. You're not required to retreat in your home.
Police will likely investigate the tenant, he says, whether he was at odds with management over unrelated issues. Also, did Montelongo announce himself and where?
There's likely to be some scrutiny about other alternatives that might have been available. But, certainly, like I said, a tragic situation. The biggest question is the notice to the homeowner prior to the shooting incident, I think, would play a very big role.
The thing is, Congressman-elect, integrity means, yes, carrying yourself with honor, but it means telling the truth, being a person of integrity. And if I were one of those in New York's 3rd District right now that the election is over, and I'm finding out all of these lies that you've told, not just one little lie or one little embellishment, these are blatant lies. My question is, do you have no shame? Do you have no shame in the people who are now, you're asking to trust you to go and be their voice for them, their families, and their kids in Washington?
Tulsi, I can say the same thing about the Democrats and the party. Look at Joe Biden. Joe Biden's been lying to the American people for 40 years. He's the president of the United States. Democrats resoundingly support him. Do they have no shame? I've made this very clear.
This is not about the Democratic Party, though. This is about your relationship, frankly, with the people who've entrusted you to go and fight for them.